Also very happy to be here today. I guess I want to piggyback a little bit off of what both Doug and Karen have just said. But I want to start off by saying that the most important impediment to access to health care is the ability to pay for it. You know, affordability is a critical issue. And the thing that drives affordability more than any other thing is the cost of care. You know, I think a lot of people think that insurance companies make up rates because they're greedy and they just want the maximum amount of profits. But actually, state insurance commissioners have rules for how insurance rates are developed. And the largest part of every rate is actually made up of claims based on the cost of care that people have received. And I think as we talk about pre-existing conditions, that's a real important thing to remember, because the cost of care is what pre-existing conditions are all about. Now, I want to start off with talking about two things. First of all, when we talk about pre-existing conditions, sometimes we use that word in too many places. There are pre-existing conditions limitations in policies. That's something that's in a policy after it's already been issued to you. It could be on an individual policy or a group policy. And then there's health status underwriting, which is actually something different altogether. And that's where questions are asked before a policy is issued. This is in the individual market in many states. And insurers have the right, if your condition is too severe, not to issue coverage. Most of the time they do issue coverage, but they have the right not to do that. In either case, the reason why it's important, to what I started off with, is that people with those pre-existing conditions use more health care. And it's not that anyone wants for them not to be insured, but we also want other people to be in the pool so that we can have a balance of the healthy and the less healthy risks, so that the cost of coverage will be affordable for everyone. If we have only sick people in the pool, then we have defeated our purpose of affordability, and that is why we have a problem with the way in which pre-existing conditions may be removed from policies today. Now, sure, if people carried coverage all the time, no, we wouldn't even ever have to worry about asking questions or placing limitations on policies, but our system is voluntary today. And if we pass health reform and it's still voluntary, or if there is a mandate that really doesn't have too much of a penalty, regardless of what you think about that, if you separate yourself from the philosophy of it and think, what is the result of this, we could end up with an imbalance in that pool of insured people, right? So we have to say, well, what can we do to mitigate that? Now, health questions today in insurance policies are used to assess risk, and I don't think that there's anyone in this room who would expect that if you applied for homeowners insurance and your house was already on fire, you wouldn't expect the policy to be issued. Nonetheless, we have this different viewpoint about health care. It feels more personal to us, and it is more personal. And that's why we have to look at doing some new things that might allow us to not be as extensive with the underwriting as we have been in the past. Now, if you can't be assured, or you decide that you don't want to require that everyone be covered consistently, then what can you do actually to mitigate the effect of people waiting until they get sick to get covered? Because that affects all of us. That affects what every person pays for their coverage, what employers pay. When people wait until they get sick, it affects the cost of coverage. One of the things that Doug mentioned, which is an interesting idea, is to have initially one open enrollment period with the late enrollment penalties for people that don't enter in that period, and that is one interesting way to look at it. Of course, beyond that, you would still have to have limits on when people can come into the program. Again, you've got to make sure that people don't wait until they're sick to be covered. You know, I'll tell just a really short story, but I think it illustrates it. Washington State used to have guarantee issue in their individual market, and the people in the insurance commissioner's office got a lovely letter from someone who had come in under the guarantee issue program. Said, gee, this insurance coverage is so wonderful. It paid so nicely when I had my baby, and thank you very much, and the next time I get pregnant, I'm going to get insured again. And that's exactly what we're talking about, and those are the things that we have to be really careful of. One of the other things we can do is to make sure that people that already have coverage readily accessible to them get into that coverage. So I think we need to look real carefully at some auto-enrollment provisions for employers so that employees who had employer-sponsored coverage available would be automatically enrolled into those programs, and they would opt out if they didn't want it, but they would be auto-enrolled first. And auto-enrollment has been very successful with 401k programs. There's no reason why it couldn't be pretty successful in this scenario as well. We need to do a lot of outreach to people to make sure that those who are eligible for subsidies, Medicaid, SCHIP, and new subsidy programs, which I'm sure would be created, understand that those programs are there so that they know what their net cost of coverage is, not the gross cost of coverage. And finally, I think that all of those things are still not going to be enough, and that we've got to create some sort of a financial backstop, particularly in the individual insurance market, to reinsure against the cost of losses by people who wait until they're sick to be covered, or even against excess losses by people who have things that come up that just couldn't be anticipated. Large employers and insurers purchase reinsurance coverage all the time. It's not a new or untried idea, but we've got to figure out a way to do so without just taxing the insurance companies to do it, which does not decrease the cost of your premiums at all. We've got to look at an investment on the government's part to provide some funds for some of that reinsurance. If we're not going to have a requirement, or we're going to have a very weak requirement that people be covered, we've got to do something else to ensure that the cost of coverage doesn't go up for everybody because of the people who didn't get coverage when they should have. And I'll go ahead and stop there.